You're listening to the DC Comics Chronicles, where we cover every adventure from the streets of Gotham to the skies of Metropolis and into the depths of Atlantis. With your hosts, Adam and Chris.
Welcome to another episode of the DC Comics Chronicles. As always, I'm your host, Adam. And with me is my co-host, Chris. Chris, how's it going?
Going very well, Adam. Happy to join you for this unscheduled impromptu vidcast. How are you doing tonight, man?
Yeah, it's a special episode, breaking news, although you'll be hearing this a couple of days after the news leaked or is revealed. It didn't leak. It was actually purposely revealed. But Anyway, it's still breaking news for the purpose of our recording, because we're recording on the day it actually was revealed. Yes. I am doing well. I'm very happy, Chris. And I'm happy because I think we're going to get some good stuff out of DC Studios. Today was like, I got to be honest with you, today was like Christmas morning for this DC fan.
We've been waiting for today since before Christmas.
We've been waiting for it. Let's be honest with you.
We've been waiting longer for this announcement than Christmas has been.
We've been waiting for this kind of structure and this kind of planning from DC and Warner Brothers probably since after The Dark Knight came out and The Dark Knight Rises. After the Nolan trilogy finished, that's when it's like, okay, now can we get something that's not just all over the place, everything separate and this and that. But anyway, so I'm doing well. I'm happy, as our viewers and listeners can probably see and hear. But today, true to his word, by the end of January, James Gunn promised to release the first. I love the fact that when he worded it on Twitter, when he first said that we'd be hearing some things, he said the first few projects of the DC shared universe. Well, when he said first few projects, I'm like, probably 4 to 6 projects. It was my guess, right?
Yeah, we did better than that.
He just said, you know what, I'm going to give you 10. And so there was a video presentation where James Gunn introduced himself. And a couple of things worth noting before we get into the actual shared portion of the DC Chapter 1 slate. Now, regarding things that are not connected to the shared DC universe, those will fall under the banner of DC Elseworlds. And they will include projects like Matt Reeves' The Batman.
Part 2,
which is what it's officially titled. And now we have a release date of October 3rd, 2025. I can't even talk. I'm so excited. It's been hours and I'm still this excited. But October 3rd, 2025.
2025 is going to be a good year.
It is, and we'll specify why in just a minute. It's going to be, it might be the world's finest year, you might say, Chris. But so October 3rd, 2025, the Batman Part 2, part of DC Elseworlds. Also part of the DC Elseworlds banner is Joker, Folie à Deux, or however you pronounce that in French, from Todd Phillips, returning Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker, and Lady Gaga as presumably Harley Quinn. That is still on target for its I believe October 2024 release date. And then the third project so far that is in the DC Elseworlds banner would be Superman and Lois. And we found out that series will be continuing for at least another year or two following its next season.
So it's currently in season 3. It's getting at least a season 4.
Right, with potentially a season 5. If it gets season 5, Chris, it'll wrap up around the spring, summer of 2025, which coincidentally times with something else that's related to a guy that flies in a red cape. But again, more on that in a second. So that's the Elseworlds banner. Now starting with chapter 1 of the DC Shared Universe, and chapter 1 is titled Gods and Monsters. So the first project out of the gate for this shared universe is an animated project titled Creature Commandos. And that some of the characters, it's basically these characters fight. The genesis of these kind of characters in the comics was basically, creatures and monsters and mystical type characters that fight Hitler and Nazis in World War II. The character lineup that I've read in regards to who James Gunn's and Peter Safran are going to be using are Rick Flag Sr., so the father of Joel Kinnaman's character, Weasel, which was in The Suicide Squad. We're going to see Frankenstein, DC's iteration of Frankenstein, and the vampire character. I don't know if it's Lady Dracula or one of Dracula's wives or something like that. But really an eclectic group, right? And the cool thing about this is it's animated. And James Gunn said what DC is going to be doing is characters are going to go in between live action and animation. And so the voice cast that is hired for Creature Commandos is going to be then transitioned into the live action versions when they appear in live action. That's really cool. So Chris, I want to get your thoughts on a couple of things. The Batman Part 2 release, the creation of the Elseworlds banner, and then this first project, Creature Commandos.
So Batman Part 2 lines up. Well, it's actually going to be coming out a little bit later than I had anticipated. So the last one came out in, what was it? What month did it come out in?
May
March?
of 2021.
May, okay.
Oh, sorry, 2022. What am I saying? 2021.
Right, May of 2022. So this one will put it about 3.5 years after that. I thought it would come a little bit earlier in the year, but we're still getting it, in that same basic 3-year window. So I'm excited for that. I'm glad that they have a start date on it, and that likely means that, they're not moving ahead with production right now, but they're getting all their pieces in place, getting all their eggs in a row. Of course, Penguin series has to come before that. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the Batman, so more in that world. I'm excited for it. And the name is very simple. There's no way to confuse it. You're not going to think it's one of the other Batman series timelines. It is the Batman Part 2. So no confusion there.
Right.
And so Elseworlds is sort of something that we had predicted all along because we knew Joker 2 was going forward. We knew Matt Reeves was going forward, but would not be connected to the overall universe. The only real news here is that the actual title, they are calling it Elseworlds. That's going to be the actual banner, which comic fans are familiar with that term. We've known Elseworlds in the DC universe forever. So it makes sense. And I'm glad that they're going to still have room for these projects outside of the main continuity. They can still invite talented storytellers to tell stories that don't necessarily line up with what's going on in the main DCU. And let's see. Oh, yeah, your third question. How do I feel about Creature Commandos? So I'm not super familiar with Creature Commandos. I did a little bit of reading on them earlier today when it was announced that it was going to be one of the projects. I think it's cool that you mentioned it, that the actors are going to cross over from animation into live action. It's sort of the reverse of what Marvel did with their movies and What If. They brought in their main actors to portray voice cast and What If. Well, this one's starting out and animated, and then it's going to branch out into other stuff, presumably. I don't know that we'll see every character, from Creature Commandos in live action, but it's cool that there's going to be that consistency and that continuity with it.
Right.
So with James Gunn, you figured he was going to do something kind of weird. He is, the guy that brought us Guardians of the Galaxy. He's the guy who kind of transformed Suicide Squad into the Suicide Squad. So it makes sense that he's kind of going with a lesser known group of characters to start his storytelling. But as he said, these first two projects out of the gate are the amuse-bouche for the main course that is the third project, which we'll get to.
It's kind of like they called it. I think Peter Safran called it like hang on 1 second. Called it an appetizer. Right, which is cool. It's one of the appetizers, which is cool. The other appetizer is something we've known about for a while. When Peacemaker did so well on HBO Max, they announced that there was going to be a season 2, but also a spinoff, right? And that spinoff is Waller. So Waller will obviously bring back Viola Davis as Amanda Waller, and she will team up with various players on Team Peacemaker, as James Gunn called it. And this makes sense given the ending of Peacemaker season 1, where she was, outed as being the mastermind behind all the some of the hoopla that went down.
Wasn't she outed by her daughter?
She was, which is going to make Thanksgiving dinner between those two not very pleasant. But it. What do you think about this? Because from what it sounds like because James Gunn is so busy with
Superman,
which we'll get to in a minute, this is going to take place in between Peacemaker and season 1 and 2. So what do you think about that?
Well, more Viola Davis as Amanda Waller is always a good thing in my book. So she's one of the aspects of the DC universe that I have really enjoyed. I love the casting. I think she does a great job with the character. And I'm excited to see what they do with what she's able to do when the show is like centrally focused around her.
Agreed. And I think it's going to be interesting to see. It's funny because these are called like appetizers to the shared DC universe, and so just keep in mind that it's that they were announced as projects as part of the shared universe. So I'm curious to see if these are just going to be, or at least the Waller. I don't think it's just going to be a situation where they're doing this just because they kind of already greenlit it, and then she's going to be done. I think there's potential for her to potentially stick around, but
we do know part of the creative team on that one. We have Crystal Henry, who's a writer on Watchmen, the series on HBO, and Jeremy Carver, who is the creator of Doom Patrol. So if you like either of those properties, Doom Patrol or Watchmen, sounds like a couple of people who were pretty instrumental in those. Both of those shows getting on TV are going to be working on this series too. So that sounds good. Right.
Yeah. It sounds like a good creative team, and like I said, I'm sure as a producer, James Gunn will be involved in some capacity, so there will be some consistency from one project from the Peacemaker project to this. But yeah, so that is the appetizer, if you will, the two projects that are appetizers. And now we come to what James Gunn described in the video as the true start of the DC shared universe, and that is his Superman project that he's writing, and Peter Safran is quote unquote hoping he will direct, and because I think it's a foregone conclusion, but the film is titled Superman Legacy, and it says that it won't be an origin, but it will be Superman balancing his Kryptonian heritage with the fact that he was born and raised on Earth. One of the quotes that Peter Safran said was that this Superman is the embodiment of kindness in a world that thinks kindness is old-fashioned. That to me is pretty much one of the epitomes of Superman in one sentence. I don't know how you can't get Superman any more than saying something like that. Now, Superman Legacy will be released July 11th, 2025.
Yep.
And Chris, it's very interesting to me that they used on social media, on DC's website, they used an cover image from Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman.
Yep.
I don't think that means that they're going to adapt All-Star Superman by any means, because if this is a younger Superman, if you go back and read All-Star Superman, it's a Superman more at the end of his career. He sacrifices himself, in fact, to save humanity. So I don't think it's like a literal adaptation, but I think they're gonna use some cues from that story, possibly in the way the Clark Kent persona is portrayed. Also, that description about Superman balancing his Kryptonian heritage and his Earth upbringing, that is very reminiscent of two books, or not two books, but the Superman, the Man of Tomorrow, the animated movie, and also Birthright, Superman Birthright. It wouldn't shock me if either of those are part of James Gunn's referencing material. Also, he has looked at Grant Morrison's Action Comics New 52 run. So, that was part of the deal in that series as well, was him kind of trying to struggle with that and work that out. So what do you think of that description? What do you think of the quote by Safran? And do you like the summer release date?
Well, yeah, Superman should be right in the middle of the big summer blockbuster movie season. I mean, this is a movie you want kids to be able to go see, 2, 3, 4 times because they're out of school, So dropping it right in July like that gives you a good couple to 3 week window before kids have to go back to school, where you can really maximize your opportunity there. The quote about kindness in a world that thinks kindness is old-fashioned, that is, I mean, even in Superman the movie in 1977, that was a Clark who was old-fashioned and very kind in a way. Oh, he was kind in a way that seemed old-fashioned for 1977 Metropolis. So you can update that general idea into 2023, and it still be applicable. You can it'll be shown different ways. It might not be the aw shucks god G Willikers corn boy, or farm boy from Smallville like that. But I think it sounds like they have a pretty good handle on what I like about the character. I've already seen some people complaining like, "Oh no, it's Superman internal struggle movie. Can't we just get Superman fighting an actual bad guy?" Like, well, yeah, there's probably going to be a bad guy. Just chill out. They haven't announced all that stuff yet.
Again, the internal struggle is fine, but to me, it's not about him struggling with anything. That wasn't my issue with the last three times Superman appeared in the movie. To me, what the character can struggle and still be, it still has to be. He's got to end up in a place that's true, or be in a place. There's got to be progression of the character, so that he becomes the character that's recognizable as the character. You know what I mean? So as long as that's there, I don't mind the character trying to juggle the two aspects of his being. You know, that's perfectly fine. Because again, if you look at All-Star Superman, if you look at Birthright, if you look at Grant Morrison's Action Comics run, that struggle's there. But Superman is all heart, hope, and heroics at the same time. So as long as that's there, I'm cool. So as we mentioned, this ties back into, as we mentioned, about Superman and Lois potentially going till 2025. If it goes till about May 2025, and then July, you know, if it finishes in season 5, then a few months later we have the brand new iteration of Superman on film. I think that's a nice segue from one to the other.
Yep,
it's
I would agree.
It's kind of like the Flash is doing with the TV show, you know, ending before the movie. So I kind of think part of it is because James Gunn and Peter Safran really like Superman and Lois, and they want to keep it around a little bit longer. But also, it would be a nice holdover while they work on the Superman film. All right. So next up on the slate is an HBO Max event series titled Lanterns.
Yes.
It's going to follow the two most popular Green Lanterns, Hal Jordan and John Stewart. They will be space cops patrolling the precinct of Earth, and they will discover a ancient mystery that affects the larger storyline in the Gods and Monster chapter of the DC Universe. This project has no connection to the previous iteration of the Green Lantern HBO show that was being developed by Greg Berlanti.
Yeah, that's dead.
That's done, and Greg Berlanti is no longer involved. You kind of knew this was going to happen when new people take over, right?
They've been talking about that Green Lantern for so long, though. Like, was it ever even really going to happen?
Who knows? But I have much more faith in this one. It
ain't happening now. Oh yeah, this is happening.
I have much more faith in this one because the heads of the studio are like, yeah, no, we're doing this. And it's funny because they used, again, in promoting this this project, they used artwork from the Green Lantern Earth 1, Volume 1 and 2. And so I wonder if they're going to be borrowing some inspiration from that. Being that they're using the artwork. But what do you think about the general premise and the fact that they're using Hal and John?
So I have two thoughts on those. Number one, it sounds like they described it as a terrestrial mystery. So it sounds like Hal and John are the two Green Lanterns that are assigned to Earth's sector. and it's a mystery they're going to be investigating that'll be mostly Earth based. Whereas they said the previous iteration, the Berlanti show, was supposed to be more of a space opera. So I personally wanted something that was away from Earth, that was kind of like dealing with other threats in the galaxy. So in that way, I'm slightly disappointed, but I am glad that they're including Hal and John, because Hal wasn't supposed to be part of the previous iteration of the Green Lantern show. It was going to focus on other Green Lanterns, and Hal is the guy that I grew up with, and I went through reading the comics when he became Parallax, and when he came back in Green Lantern Rebirth. So I've been on a Hal Jordan I've been on the journey with the character through a lot of stuff over the last 30 years. So I'm really, really glad that it seems like he's a priority in this show, and that they're going to be focusing on him and John. And it sounds like they said it's going to be like a true detective. I only saw the first season of that show. I haven't seen the ones since then, but I really dug it. So, if it's going to be that type of show where it's, an overall storyline and overall mystery that they are investigating throughout the course of the series, then that sounds cool to me, man. I'm excited for it.
Could that ancient mystery, keep in mind we're dealing with gods and monsters as the title of this chapter, could that ancient mystery be Parallax infecting people on Earth, causing them to do evil, dastardly stuff?
Yeah, I mean, if they're looking for an entity that could influence people, then we know that Parallax feeds on fear.
Yeah.
So that's something that even these days is in abundance in the world, I think. So for sure, that could be one of the routes they're taking.
And the other thing is too, he did mention that there will be a couple other lanterns peppered in. So we're going to see some more. But I would suspect, just to talk about one of your initial wants, I suspect that once Hal and John enter the feature film realm, there will be some spacefaring, intergalactic, fun stuff happening. So I'm willing to bet you're still going to get that. Next on the list is one of the movies that I did not have on my bingo card. I didn't even have on the radar, and that is the Wildstorm characters created by Warren Ellis and Brian Hitch, and that is The Authority. Now, The Authority has Midnighter, Apollo, and a whole host of other characters, and they are a more no nonsense. There's a clear cut. They have a clear cut sense of what is right and wrong, good and evil, and they're the kind of group that will do, the things that a Justice League type of group wouldn't do to solve a problem. It's really interesting that while that group was created by Warren Ellis and Brian Hitch, most recently, Grant Morrison wrote a miniseries titled Superman and the Authority. So I'm wondering, with this shared universe, since this is coming after Superman, could there be potential crossover there? And regardless of that, what do you think of The Authority, a film version of The Authority? And are you familiar at all with The Authority?
I am not familiar with The Authority. So, as you say, they started as Wildstorm characters, right?
Yeah.
I didn't read any Wildstorm comics at all, and I haven't really familiarized myself with them as they've been brought into the main DC continuity. So, it's kind of like out of left field. It's not something that I would have guessed in 100 guesses as far as the first 10 titles to come out for the new DCU. But James Gunn says this is a passion project for him, and that he's been working really hard with the writers getting the script together for this. So, if it's something that he's excited about and he sees a way to tie it into the overall story that they're telling, then cool. If we're getting Superman first, perhaps that'll be a really good juxtaposition to having the brand of justice that Superman dishes out, which is more truth, hope, American way, all that stuff, versus the brand of justice that the Authority dishes out. So it'll be cool. I think they're coming. They are back to back as far as movies go. Lanterns comes between them in the form of an HBO series,
Right.
but Superman and then the Authority are coming out in theaters. So I think it'll be cool to see how those different takes on justice are visualized in those movies.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And again, I didn't have that on, like I said, didn't have that on my bingo card. I've read a little bit about them, but I'm intrigued. Look, the last time James Gunn worked on a passion project about characters that I wasn't that familiar with, it turned out to be Guardians of the Galaxy. So, and that first one was something else. So, if Gunn's passionate about it, I'm all for it. Next on the list is another HBO Max series titled Paradise Lost. So what this is it is a show that takes place on Themyscira prior to Wonder Woman's birth, or mostly prior to Wonder Woman's birth. And it was described by James Gunn as Game of Thrones, but with Themyscira. So we're going to look at the political, social, all the stuff that would happen, and how that society of these powerful, badass women came to be, the origins of all that. And so, but it was compared. It was like the Game of Thrones for Themyscira. So now I don't know that we're going to get that level of violence, gore, and nudity, but I mean, that description is pretty pretty intriguing. So, Chris, what's your take on Paradise Lost?
It's answering a question that I never had. Like, I never really wondered, like, why is Themyscira the way it is? Like, my main exposure to the island and everything that involves it is through the character of Wonder Woman. And I haven't read a ton of Wonder Woman comics. Yeah. Of course, I've seen the movies, and I enjoy the first Wonder Woman a lot. I think it's a very well-made movie, and it's one that I can rewatch with my kids, and we really enjoy it. But I never thought about the political intrigue or the way that society developed into becoming what it is. So, I think it's interesting. It's not something I have ever wondered about really, or been interested in learning more about. But, if they have the right, creative team working on it, if they have good writers and good actors and stuff, then sure. I mean, it's interesting that they say Game of Thrones, because you mentioned just three things in a row, like the violence, the nudity, those types of things. Like, when you say the words Game of Thrones, it conjures certain things to mind, and that's gonna make people wonder if those parts of that show are gonna be parts of this show. But B, it's also setting a pretty high bar as far as quality.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And also, I'll say this: look, in both Wonder Woman films, some of my favorite aspects were the stuff on Themyscira. So you're telling me you're going to give me a show with more of that? Yes, please. Is my answer to that. And we'll talk a little bit more about Wonder Woman in my theory segment. But Of course, we've talked about Superman. Paradise Lost and Themyscira is a representation of Wonder Woman. Whether she's in it, probably not because she won't be born yet. But it represents the Wonder Woman aspect of the DC universe. And a lot of people are like, okay, you told us about the Batman Part 2, but what about Batman in the DC shared universe? Because the Batman is in Elseworlds. Well, Batman is joining the DC universe. And he's not
bringing
coming
some
alone.
friends with him.
He's being joined by Robin in a movie titled The Brave and the Bold. Now, when I say he's being joined by Robin, there are differing fans of the character of Robin that are like, hey, my favorite Robin is coming into the franchise. No, my favorite Robin, well, no, I'll tell you which Robin it is. It's his actual son, that little prick, Damian Wayne, and I say that lovingly, folks, is coming into the DC universe. And James Gunn said that, first of all, that Damian is his and Peter Safran's favorite version of favorite iteration of Robin. He said that this will be based on the Grant Morrison run on the Batman and Robin comics. And he said that it's really about, the father-son relationship of Bruce and Damian. Bruce not knowing that Damian existed for the first 8 to 10 years of his life and being raised as an assassin. And then Batman having to then take up the job of raising him and trying to put him on a straight and narrow path. But that also, it would be an introduction of the Bat family into the DC universe. So a couple of things here. If we're going to the Damian Wayne version of Robin, and James Gunn and Peter Safran saying that the Bat family is going to be, there are other members of the Bat family that are going to be in this, Peter Safran said. So I'm assuming that at the very least, we're going to get Dick Grayson Nightwing in this movie or in this franchise. Do they bring in Jason Todd? Does that mean Batgirl Barbara Gordon is around? Because that's the Bat family. I got to be honest, Chris. I like this decision. This is a good decision. I'll tell you. And I am 50-50 on Grant Morrison in terms of the stuff he's written. That initial run where he introduced Damian was great stuff.
Oh yeah, it's some of my favorite comics of the last 20 years.
So a couple of questions I have for you is, what do you make of this direction for bringing Batman into the shared universe? And which Bat family members do you want to see aside from Damian?
Well, this is, Damian aside, the Bat family aspect of this is kind of what we've been asking for a long time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, we have wanted to see a Batman with his, with his crew on the big screen in a film that features all the members of the Bat family. And I think it's great. I think this is a perfect way to introduce him. We don't need an origin story, obviously.
If you don't know the origin of Batman, please watch a TV show, read a comic, watch a movie.
There.
It's there. It's around. There's about 40,000 versions of it.
Yeah, it's out there. Damian is my favorite Robin.
All right.
I love me some Damian Wayne. I think he's a great character. I think the dichotomy between him being trained as an assassin and Batman's like major rule in comics is I don't kill, So watching that relationship try to take hold when there's such a philosophical difference is really interesting to me.
Yeah.
I hope that Damien's inclusion doesn't mean that the other Robins don't exist. You know what I'm saying? Like
I think they would have to in some form. Like I believe Dick is going to be Nightwing at this point.
sure.
Whether you see Tim or Jason is up in the air. I think the for sure is that will. I don't know whether it should be in movie one, but I think the members of the Bat family that I think are guaranteed at some point in this universe are uh, Dick Grayson, uh, Damian Wayne, and Barbara Gordon. I think those are the guarantees. Whether
Yeah.
we get Tim and Jason, I'm who knows, but I could see it.
And they don't even have to be in the movie. I just hope that they are out there somewhere. You know, you could very easily say that Tim is away at college. You
Yeah,
know, he's 19, he's off studying.
and
Jason
Jason
has
could be
already,
dead.
yeah, he could be dead, or he could be Red Hood. You know,
Yeah, he could make a villain at some point to bring him back in. Yeah,
so you know, those are the ones that I want to see. The main ones are Damien, Dick, and Barbara. I think you nailed it. I want Tim and Jason to be a part of this universe, but if they're not in this movie, like that's fine.
right.
I
Yeah,
understand. I love the Grant Morrison run of Batman and Robin. It's really good storytelling. You know, I hope we get something. You know, he doesn't have to be like the main villain, but I really would like to see a weird Professor Pig on screen. I think that would be pretty cool. Um, and you know, having Dick as Nightwing sets up the storytelling device later in the future where he could always become Batman if
Adam
Batman.
wants a Nightwing movie. James Gunn, if you're watching this, you're probably not, but at some point, chapter two maybe.
Sure.
You know. Um, but yeah, I'm ecstatic. I didn't even look. I was kind of on the fence of is James Gunn going to wait to use Batman until Reeves has done his thing? I wasn't sure. This pretty much answers the question, and I'm happy for it. You know, the more to me, you want to give me all the Batman you want, give me all the Batman. Give me a Batman buffet, I'll take it. You know. All right. Before we move on to the next project, I gotta ask. So Batman's got Damien. So two questions I have before we move on are:
Okay.
how old is the Batman actor? Number one, and number two, given that his mother and grandfather are Talia and Ra's al Ghul respectively, do they appear in The Brave and the Bold?
Okay. Batman actor, I'm gonna say 35 ish. Okay. Damien could be 10 or so. That lines up with, you know, him
Yeah,
still being in peak condition to still be Batman for a long time, but old enough to be viewed as a father and a father figure.
yeah,
And also, if the other Robins have existed, there needs to be time for that to have happened between him becoming Batman and where he is now. So I think that 35-ish range
right.
is good enough where you could have an actor playing Batman. I mean, you could have an actor playing Batman for 15 years, 20 years, you know?
Yeah.
Um, what was the second part you asked?
Will
Oh yeah. I
Ra's
think
al
you'll
Ghul and Talia?
definitely see Talia. I think Talia has to make an appearance.
Yeah, she's
Um,
his mother.
yeah, you know, Roz, mm, maybe, hopefully. I just hope that in this iteration they are actually called the League of Assassins and not changed to League of Shadows like they did for Batman Begins. Because
And I think if both of those characters are in there, Chris, I think it's going to be more fantastical, for sure, without question.
yeah, let's get some Lazarus Pit stuff
Yeah, give me
going
the
on.
Lazarus Pit. Give me Man Bat, whatever you want. Just go nuts. Like at this point, I love what Matt Reeves is doing, the grounded, realistic thing. But I also want him to go nuts and just play with the comics.
Yep.
All right, so there's Batman.
Look,
Next up,
I'll say this about this about this project. Superman is like my favorite character, like in comics.
okay.
But this Brave and the Bold is the project that I'm looking forward to the most
All right,
out of what they've announced.
all right, cool. I've got a top three of which are my favorite. I'll tell you those later.
Okay.
But the next project is back on HBO Max, and it's Booster Gold. Now this one, look, I was expecting this the minute they announced James Gunn was co-CEO. I'm like, all right, Booster Gold is coming. I don't know when, but he's coming, and here he is. James Gunn describes Booster as a loser from the future who travels back in time pretending to be a superhero so that people will love him. That's a very apt description of Booster Gold. I think this has the potential to be really fun.
Yeah.
And I like Booster as a character in the bits that I've read about him. And I'm going to make a call right now, and I may be talking out of my rear end. I may be completely wrong. But remember, James Gunn said he wanted to work with some of the people that he's worked with cast-wise at Marvel in DC. I'll tell you right now. Here's my prediction. Chris Pratt is going to be our Booster Gold. That's just my prediction.
Interesting.
I'm just calling it there right now. I think it's smart to do this as an HBO thing. That format, I think, would be better suited than an actual 2-hour plus film. But I'm excited for this. I'm really looking forward to it. What about you?
Oh yeah, I love Booster, man. Booster is such a fun character. He's such a kind of a loser, but a lovable loser. Even though he's out for like personal gain. I hope that Skeets is a part of the movie. Like
Oh, it would have to be.
yeah, or not the movie, the series, the TV show. But yeah, I think it's going to be really funny to see this, this dude trying to use technology that in his time is considered like just common everyday technology, but he's going to be using it in the 21st century to look like he's a superhero, basically, and con people into thinking he's something that he's not.
Right.
And he's a humorous, comedic character. As long as they play it for laughs, the way that I think it should be played, I'm excited.
Oh, absolutely. This should be a comedy for sure. Yeah, this should be a comedy. If you're going serious and grounded with this, you've done it wrong. So we're both excited for that. The next project on the list, and this one, I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting this, Chris. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. James Gunn described this as an adaptation of the comic book written by Tom King that came out in 2022. Full disclosure, I have not read this book.
Neither have I.
Also, full disclosure, I am about 40-60 in terms of liking and disliking the stuff that Tom's written in comics. But you know what? If this is being adapted, guess what Adam is going to go buy on the Amazon Kindle? Superman, Woman of Tomorrow. That's what Adam's going to buy. I don't know why I'm talking like The Rock in third person, but here we are. James Gunn said that this is going to showcase, it's going to be a big space adventure, and it's really going to showcase the differences between Superman and Supergirl.
Right.
Whereas Superman was, arrived in a rocket ship, was raised by Jonathan and Martha Kent, lovable farmer, great parents. Then you have Supergirl, who was raised on a piece of rock, a segment of Krypton, watched all of her loved ones die from, at the age of 14. And that leaves her a little bit angry, conflicted. So and he said we're gonna see a different side of Supergirl than maybe people are familiar with. And I guess if you read that book, you'll get a sense of what he's talking about. Look, this book won awards. It was nominated for a lot of awards. I don't know how many it won, but I know it won a couple. So, and James Gunn seems to really, really love this. So, again, I wasn't expecting Supergirl to get her own film. I really wasn't. Now, so Chris, before we get into my next question,
look at this. When you go on Amazon and you type in Supergirl, the first thing that comes up is Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. So people have been searching this today. It's popping up on top of the search.
And Jay, you mean, wait a minute, they searched it? I thought they only did that when it was on somebody's coffee table. It seems like people have interest in James Gunn's DCU, Chris. The internet, Twitter's been telling me that nobody has interest in this thing. I don't know. Maybe my algorithm is screwed up, but that's pretty good. But so, Chris, let me ask you. No hashtag necessary. But anyway, let me ask you this. So, what do you think of this? The fact that we're getting an like he specified this adaptation.
Well, it's hard to say that I'm excited for it. Because, okay, I love Supergirl as a character, but I don't know this Supergirl, Okay. I haven't read this story, and there have been so many different Supergirls over the year. There have been Linda Danvers, Kara Zor-El, Matrix.
Yeah.
So this seems like a new iteration that I'm not familiar with.
It is Kara Zor-El.
Okay.
That I can tell you.
Okay, well, obviously, it is Superman's actual cousin from Krypton.
Right.
So, I am withholding my excitement until I do as you said you will be doing and pick this book up and give it a read, because now I'm intrigued and I want to know what's going on.
I'm going to suggest something, Chris, for the future of this show, future episodes. There are two things that I think you and I should do in a response to this announcement. One is go back and reread Grant Morrison's Batman run.
Oh, no problem. I'd love to do that. And
do a review of that. And two is to do a review of this Woman of Tomorrow book.
Oh, yeah. I'm down for that.
Cool. Now, here's my question to you. We know that in June, Sasha Calle is going to appear in The Flash.
Yes.
As Kara Zor-El, a.k.a. Supergirl. James Gunn, throughout all the interviews in various trades, has said so first of all, Amanda Waller is coming back along with some of Team Peacemaker, probably John Cena, etc., firmly inside of Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters, correct?
Yep.
He's described The Flash, James Gunn did, as being one of the best superhero movies he's seen. Part of that could be PR because he's the head of the studio, but James Gunn, the way he's been talking about it, I genuinely believe him. But he's also said, in addition to, I almost called her Amanda Waller, Viola Davis. That's how good her performance was, folks. I almost called her by the character's name. In addition to Viola Davis, the door is open for people who have played their roles in the DCEU for certain characters to return. Gal Gadot, Zachary Levi,
Jason Momoa,
and as of now, and they made a special case with Ezra that right now he's focused on his recovery, His rehab and recovery is going well. And if he stays on track, when the time comes to discuss it, we'll sit down and discuss with him. So potentially for Ezra Miller. Now, if you have this Supergirl project, this Woman of Tomorrow, Sasha Calle is appearing as the character in The Flash. You searched, or the Andy Muschietti and Warner Brothers did a search of 425 women. She beat 424 other people. Do you think potentially she returns for this project?
Man, okay. I'll put it. It's so hard to say. I'll put it like this. Okay, they have already said that we are getting a new actor as Superman and a new actor as Batman. We know that in this Superman movie, it is not going to be Henry Cavill. It's going to be a new actor taking over. We know in the Batman movie, it is not going to be Robert Pattinson, and it is not going to be Ben Affleck. Now, Ben Affleck's name has been thrown around for directing, but he's not starring in this movie. It's a new Batman. Yeah. So we know we're getting those two new portrayals. The ones that they haven't said anything about, Shazam, Flash, Aquaman, they all still have movies coming out that have to be promoted and that you have to sell tickets for. So they would really be cutting themselves off at the knees if they said, you know what, we're not moving forward with these actors or characters beyond these films, but please come see these movies over the course of the next year. I mean, they just can't do that.
Right, of course.
So I don't really see how they can continue with actors from the current slate of films that's coming out if they're trying to go for telling a new story and changing things around.
And partially I agree with you, but it's the inclusion of Waller, John Cena, and whoever else they bring back from Peacemaker for the Waller show within the framework of Chapter 1 that has me questioning. Because Peter Safran said, well, Jason Momoa and the team have always considered Aquaman as a trilogy. Okay. So, and Gunn further said that no one DC actor is going to play two characters simultaneously.
Right.
So, if you've always envisioned Aquaman as a trilogy, provided the second one doesn't tank miserably, does that mean Jason Momoa returns for Aquaman 3 inside of Gods and Monsters?
Or could it be, is Aquaman rebranded in Elseworlds?
These are the questions. Because if Aquaman makes $1 billion, right? See, I had a theory that what if they do Aquaman, let's say Aquaman 2 makes another $1 billion. That's hypothetically, whatever. And they do another Aquaman 3, and it's set within Gods and Monsters, let's say this chapter. What if at the end of the movie, so in movie 2, they set up the son or daughter of Aquaman and Mera, because depending on which comics you're playing with, it could be either or, right? And then Aquaman, Jason Momoa, sacrifices himself in movie 3, and then we either have Aqualad or Aquawoman take over in Gods and Monsters. And so this way, that would allow Jason Momoa to transition to play Lobo down the line. Or, like you said, they relabel it. But I'm just the only reason I'm curious about Sasha Calle is because you did that massive search, and she beat out all those other people. See, because as long as you don't have her interact with Henry Cavill, I think it's fair game.
Well, and Flash is also going to be a reset.
Right.
So, really, depending on how they rejigger that movie, anything is fair game. She could exist in the Henry Cavill universe, but then, due to the events of Flash, she now exists in this quote, DC universe moving forward.
And the other reason why I'm curious about her possibly continuing on in the role for this film is because we do have a writer's room. So two pieces of information that also came out today via the trades is that James Gunn and Peter Safran are in talks with Andy Muschietti to direct more DC films. Like that's how much everybody seemingly loves this Flash movie. That they want to work with him again. So if he's hypothetically in talks to come back, and we have a writer's room for the DC universe, can you roll off some of the names, Chris, of the writer's room?
Well, just the ones I know off the top of my head are Tom King, who we know from his work on Batman and Mr. Miracle,
and Superman, Woman of Tomorrow.
Yeah, Supergirl.
Supergirl, sorry.
Yes.
Brain fart.
Drew Goddard.
Yeah, who did Daredevil season 1.
Yeah. He also famously wrote the scrapped Sinister Six screenplay that never got made, but he was the guy that was behind that. And then we got Christina Hodson, who did the scripts for The Flash, Birds of Prey, and Bumblebee.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so stop right there. So we know they're in talks with Andy Muschietti to return. The writer of The Flash, which features Sasha Calle's Supergirl, who was cast by Andy Muschietti, who is in talks to continue on. You know what I mean? There's coincidences here that are starting to pile up that lead me to believe that I'm not saying she will, but she could continue on. See, my thing is, it depends on how the Flash ends,
right?
And if she doesn't interact with Henry Cavill's Superman. By all accounts, Henry Cavill's cameo that he did film for The Flash has been scrapped. So she will not be interacting with Henry Cavill's Superman. So I'm not saying she will. I get the whole PR speak until those movies come out. It's just the Aquaman being where it is and the Waller and Peacemaker stuff being where they are positioned within this universe has me questioning. But either way, the Supergirl thing was a surprise, unexpected. But I'm intrigued and looking forward to it. Bring me the Bat Family, bring me the Super Family. I'm all good for both. So the final project on the list, Chris, is Swamp Thing.
Yep.
And Swamp Thing will, according to James Gunn, explore the dark origins of Swamp Thing.
And this is a movie, not a series.
This is a movie, correct. I'm not surprised.
Cool, man. James Gunn and horror. Let's do it.
Right, but I'm not surprised because Swamp Thing had a series on, I guess it was the DC Universe back in the day when it was still a thing.
Right.
There's been talk about Justice League Dark for years. J.J. Abrams was going to head up at one point the Justice League Dark universe. So, I mean, this is a no-brainer. And it fits, that and Creature Commandos fits the James Gunn weirdness that we're used to with his projects. And it wouldn't shock me, Chris, if some of the Creature Commandos make their live-action debut in Swamp Thing.
Could be, yeah.
Now, there was one of the trades said that James Gunn is close to securing a director for an unannounced project in phase one, or chapter one, excuse me. And this director is notorious for taking his time. You know who I think of when I read that description? There's only one guy. Well, there's two, but really one. Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah, I don't know if you want him on a Superman movie that's supposed to come
not
out in
Superman.
2 years.
No, I'm not Superman. I'm saying the darker corner.
Oh, yeah. For like Swamp Thing?
Swamp Thing or the eventual Justice League Dark or something like that.
Yeah.
There was also talk of the trades that since Constantine 2 is in the writing stage of this, it wasn't mentioned in the slate, but they're currently starting writing the script. That is, according to the trades, being reworked to have Keanu Reeves potentially join this DC shared universe. So again, if we're potentially bringing in a guy that was last seen in a DC movie in 2005 for this shared universe, I can't disclude the possibility of Sasha Calle, who is just going to be introduced, sticking around. You know what I mean? But look, that's the slate. So what do you think of the Swamp Thing? What's your thought on Swamp Thing?
I mean, as a character, I have enjoyed
The character
him in
and the concept of a movie. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I've enjoyed him in the stories that I've read. I think a 2-hour movie probably works pretty well. Like, I wasn't one of the people who actually watched the DC Universe series when it came out.
I did. It was pretty good.
Okay. I've heard it was pretty good. I know there were production issues.
By the way, they had Crystal Reed as the main girl there, Alec Holland's love interest, and she used to be in Gotham as Falcone's daughter. And I just have to point out, because I haven't done it. I haven't done it all podcasts, folks. But Crystal Reed on the list. Anyway, carry on. But yeah, no, it was good. I enjoyed it. So yeah.
And it seems like it suits Gunn's like sensibilities. I think.
Yeah, well, definitely, for sure.
He made us care about a humanoid tree with a sentient swamp being. I'm sure he'll be able to pull at your heartstrings just as well.
Yeah, I gotta say, overall thoughts on the overall review of the slate. I think it's a great mix of the established characters, the core of DC, and the lesser known, more obscure. I think it's a perfect balance of both, and it's more than I thought we were going to get at this point. And I'm just ready for it. Like, I am so excited. I know that apparently the Commandos,
Creature Commandos.
Thank you. Creature Commandos is in development now. They are currently casting the roles. And so what's being bandied about in the trades is that the Creature Commandos and Waller could be 2024 projects. So hypothetically, the 2024 slate for DC would be Joker 2 and then Creature Commandos and Waller on TV. Now, Gunn has said that he and Peter Safran are shooting for basically 2 films and 2 series a year. And this chapter would take us through 2027.
Cool.
So if that's the case, we're looking at Batman. We're looking at Superman Legacy, Lanterns, The Authority, and Paradise Lost in 2025. Brave and the Bold, Booster Gold, and Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow in 2026. If that plan stays intact. So that means, Chris, that we're going to get, and I never thought this would be the case, within a year of each other, 2 different Batman movies.
Sweet.
And you know what I call that, Chris? I call that a little slice of heaven, my friend.
Yeah.
Sign me the hell up.
Nothing like being a spoiled fan. I'll take it.
So that's the same. What are your thoughts, overall thoughts, before we wrap up here on the slate?
Oh man, full speed ahead, baby. Let's go. Start churning these things out, man. What are we waiting on? Let's go.
It's about you know what? It's about damn time. That's all. I mean, look at the smile on my face. The only thing better with this news is if I was reading it on my phone on a dinner date with Margot Robbie and Alexa Bliss simultaneously. That's number one. And the only thing that can make any of this better is if the Leafs win the Stanley Cup this year, which they won't, so I won't count on that, but I digress. Anyway, pie in the sky, since things are going my way right now, I might as well hope for everything. But I'm excited. You're excited. We're going to get casting for a lot of this. Like, we're going to get Superman casting soon.
You know what's cool, man? So my son is going to be 10 years old when that Superman movie comes out. That's going to be like the perfect movie to take kids to. And right. James Gunn said, I was reading the actual release on the DC.com site. So they have a little bit more in-depth like answers from Safran and Gunn. And Gunn says he knows that Superman is a firm PG-13 4-quadrant movie.
Oh, thank God.
It relates to everyone.
Somebody gets it, Chris.
4-quadrant. Bring them all in.
Chris, I don't want to pat myself on the back like Mr. Perfect, but maybe I do. What the hell? But how many times have I said to you in our discussions about DC, the problem was the Superman movie, the last iteration wasn't 4-quadrant? How many times did I say that?
Yeah, this sounds like a movie that it's going to be families want to go see it, like with the original Superman movie.
And you know what 4-quadrant movies do if they're done well? They get repeat viewings.
And they make money.
Indeed. So we're excited. Of course, Chris and I, Donnie, Chris and I, all 3 of us, as we hear more about this, the news, the castings, et cetera, more announcements, we're going to be covering right here on this channel. I'm so excited to cover this iteration of the DC Universe on film and television from the ground up with my team. Good times are rolling, folks. Get excited, get pumped. And if you're not, sorry about that. I can't relate. But Chris, that's it for now. But if people want to get at you on social media and celebrate the chapter 1 of the DC Universe, where can they do that on social media?
So on Twitter, I'm at Chris N. Harrelson, or you can search for Commodore Schmidlap.
Right.
I am also on Facebook. Adam will post about this in the Facebook group, and I will be hanging around there as well.
Awesome. And if you want to get in touch with me, it's at Adam_LeafsFan on Twitter. The podcast network has its own Twitter handle at MMNPDC. Chris mentioned the Facebook group. The link is in the description below. Click that. I will add you, and we can continue the conversation there. But remember, the DC Universe is forever. From the first chapter James Gunn announced today to the last. So long, everybody.